All right, welcome. This is Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. Share this out, share this out, share this out. Share it out to everybody. I see a couple of you in the crowd. Said hello there. I see Denise and I see Pamela. Welcome. Like I said, share this out. It's Friday night. We're going to be doing the Law of One, of course. All right, pick up where we left off last week on session 14 or 15. Right, we're on session 14, question 14 or 15 is where we are. They were talking about the harvest. Dawn was asking Raw about the harvest. And to recap, 75,000 years ago was when this cycle began. At the 50,000 year ago mark, nobody was able to ascend. At the 25,000 year ago mark, there were souls who could ascend, but none of them chose to. They all chose to return to hell. After that, at approximately 403 about 200 years ago, a little bit less than that, there were 38 souls who could ascend and chose not to. So the people who have been able to ascend have been choosing not to return to hell. There are a lot of souls that are currently able to ascend at any particular time, but they don't for the same reason. And I know that my internet is messing up right now. I can see that the signal is down, so I apologize if I'm coming through with breaking up while I'm doing this, right? I apologize for that. We're having big storms here. Last night between 2 and 2:30 a.m. Power went out. I know because I'm a very light sleeper. And when the power goes off, I wake up. When it comes back on, I wake up. So that happened 4 times. Power went off, came back on, 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 and then finally stayed on. But there was issues, right? Thank you, Denise. Hit like on my channel, so thank you. If you are on Facebook listening and you happen to be on my personal wall, my personal page, and you make a comment in the chat, I'm going to have to go and look. But if you do that and you make a comment in the chat and I don't answer it, it's because for whatever reason, Facebook has it allows the group to go in and say something in the chat. But then when it's the page and the group, if for some reason it doesn't allow that. Now I'm even looking to see if I'm live, and it doesn't even show me live on my page right now. Oh no, here I am. So I am live right now on the page. So if there's anybody who's there and you're making comments and I don't see them, I apologize for that. That is today, right? Nope, that was from February 15th. So I don't even see me live on my own page today, even though I said I was going live there. Maybe I'll have to refresh my own screen. I apologize for that because I said that I was going to go live on my wall, but it's not showing me. Now it is. I had to refresh. Okay. So if I'll try to monitor if there's anybody there talking, I'll try to go there and look, but I apologize if you do and I don't see you. Okay. I always tell people, hi, Casey, welcome. I always tell everybody, where am I in California? Denise said, are you getting snow? No, California is, but I'm too low. I'm just outside this. I'm literally a suburb of the state capital in Sacramento, and we're only about 62 or 3 feet above sea level, if that, where I'm at. They say it's even less than that, but I'm up a little bit higher where I'm at than the town is. Where I grew up in Concord was 38 feet above sea level. So we get snow once in a lifetime, But they were talking about possibly getting snow here because it was going to be so cold. We had hail in the last couple of days, but it was really windy and stormy last night. It's supposed to get that way again tonight. Because all these storms are just blowing in now, and then it's shooting across the nation, right? Everybody going north from here in the mountains is snowed in. They have the passes all locked down right now. You can't get over the Sierra into Nevada anywhere from down in LA all the way up to the tip of Nevada and Oregon. California is socked in with snow, and literally almost every pass over the Sierras is, in fact, locked down. You can't even get into the Yosemite Valley. Yosemite Valley got 8 feet of snow in the last 2 days. That whole valley's closed. You can't even get in there. And if you're in there, you're staying. And if you're up in Tahoe, you're staying. So it's been snowing and raining the entire state, and we have another storm coming in. So it was kind of crazy, right? So what does this say? Somebody was saying something here. How many of you watched this live or see it? Oh, somebody's asking a question, and I don't know if you guys are on my other page or not, but somebody was asking that. So we are live if you're listening and you can hear me right now. And people do watch live, right? Right, Denise said tomorrow, very cold in Long Island, New York, but no snow here yet. It's on its way, Denise. It's on its way from back here. The storms that have pushed through are now wreaking havoc going east and dumping snow all over the place, heading towards New York. So you guys will be getting snow in another couple of days. So that my internet is tripping, even though I'm paying for literally the second fastest internet that you can get as a civilian. I'm still having a little bit of issues. So Hawkeye said, what is this? Hawkeye, this is the law of one. Let me explain it to you really quickly. It's in the description, but I will explain it just in case, because people catch this show either on live on the MP4 file like we're doing here, but I'm not showing a picture. I can turn it on so you can see me. Let me turn this overlay off and you'll be able to see me here. Where's my overlay here? There it is. And I'll pull myself up on the screen here. My name is Leonard O'Neill, and I should probably be looking at the screen here instead of looking at the comments. This is the law of one, and what we're teaching about. I teach about spirituality above and beyond religions. I have 4 titles in 4 different religions as a priest or a minister or whatever you want to call that. Merlin, I have that title too. And I've spent my entire life researching aliens. I created Ancient Aliens Worldwide, the group on Facebook that has almost 300,000 members right now. It's the largest group other than like MUFON Global's website, searching for UFOs and aliens throughout all of history. So I've worked on both of those projects. And the Law of One is this group of people called the LL Research Group, back between 1981 and 1984, using ESP, a form of it, channeling, reached out to the universe to see if anybody was out there. They were trying to figure out if there was aliens or whatever back then. They made contact with someone, but it wasn't one single person. It was an entire hive mind complex, an entire species that was thinking as one. If you're a Star Trek fan, like the Borg, only they weren't bad guys. And they were channeling through Carla Ruckert, the woman who channeled them for that time between 1981 and 1984. And I have read all of the 6 books. I've actually done this entire series once before a few years ago and finished it 2021 or 2020, somewhere around there. And I'm going back and revisiting it. And what I do is, you'll see if you stay around long enough, I play. This is the stuff that I'm playing to you is the actual transcript from the recording when they recorded the session, unedited. This is not the version they put in the book, but the book only edited out a few things that was a problem. Well, you'll hear that, like the computer repeats numbers 2 or 3 times because they show you the number and then they write the number down. So the computer repeats both. When they did the book, they changed that. So when you're reading the book, you don't see it twice, or you don't hear it twice. This comes from their website. You can go to lawofone.info, INFO, and you can actually read along with what I'm playing to you, because that's literally where I got it from. You can also hit play there. There's a little blue arrow that you can press, and you can actually hear the recording. But it takes 45 minutes to an hour for Carla to go to do the one session. She speaks very slowly. It was really hard to channel raw, so she speaks really slowly. But you can there, and I used to tell people to go there, and I used to have monitors open with the book itself and the transcript, and I talked about the differences in that. This time it's not as clinical that way. I'm translating into a language that you guys can understand, and giving you guys examples using different parables to show you exactly what Ra was talking about, and then show you in a spiritual setting, a comparison. As a theologian, we'll compare, and I always do that, compare all the different religions and how it pertains to the different spiritual practices on the planet, and what's going on then, now, whatever need to be talked about. And what we're talking about currently, hopefully you stick around, buddy, and take a look. But what we're currently discussing is the possibility of human souls being harvested, graduating, when people were able to do so. The whole purpose of what Ra was talking about was that evil people got wind of basically how things work and eradicated all memory of what you needed to know to be able to graduate, and they've kept everybody stuck here to the point where the people that are on this planet, all of us, are stuck, and we're just, every time we die, we just recycle. We can't actually graduate because no one can find the door or the key to graduate. And it took things like Jesus, if you're Christian, but 11 other times throughout the history that we know of, that same character came and did the same things in different places around the world with different names. And the last time was 2,000 years ago. And that was Jesus, the Christ, who did that then. And we haven't had another Savior character come in that guise. And literally, history shows that the walking on water, turning water to wine, making the blind see, healing, bringing back the dead, all of those things that are told in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John happened literally in different places all over the world. And we've shown that. I have personally shown 7 of the 12 times, but the theologians and the scientists believe that like the Buddha and Lao Chi, who were both in China at the same time. Lao Chi is the Tao Te Chi. Taoism is based on Lao Chi's ideology, and of course the Buddha is based on the prince's. He was a prince. I can't remember his name right now. I forgive me for that. His ideology, and we believe that they were 2 more guises of that Savior character, going all the way back to Marduk in the Mesopotamia Akkadian, which is the oldest scroll that we have that is a creation story, which is about 3,000 years old. But we know that there were things that happened prior to that. So most of our memory is based on the deluge, the flood. And we now know that there were at least, and we're told by some people, 7 destructions of the human race. And this is the 7th one. So it's been 6 destructions, and we're in the 7th. And what I'm doing now is translating that to you, and then showing you how that fits, and explaining all the stuff about that. Hopefully it'll be something that you might want to listen to. And if not, it's your choice. So I'm going to go ahead and take my ugly mug back off the screen here. And I'll put the overlay on, because otherwise this is what you guys see the whole time. So I'll put the overlay back up. And I am going to start. We are actually in the middle. I apologize to you for that. We're in the middle of a session, but I'm going to start there. And like I said, we're literally, Don, the questioner, was asking Ra about the cycles of people being able to graduate. And we're in the middle of that conversation. So we're on, I believe, it's session 14. I believe it's question 14 or 15, but we'll see when we start. I picked a spot right at 8 minutes through the 30-minute session, because that's where we ended last week. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and press play, and we'll start there. And let me know how you guys can hear it. Whether you can hear it. Brianna, welcome. If I missed Pamela, welcome. I wasn't looking at the chat, so if you don't say hi, I don't know you're in there. If you do say hi, then that's fine. And like I said, if you choose to leave, then it's not for you, and it's not time for you to be here yet. And you'll find someone else that maybe you actually feel like you're resonating with. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, guys. Let me know about the volume. I'm going to turn it up because I am not using headset again. So I am using the regular volume. So if it's not loud enough, I'll just turn it up. But let me know how you can hear it. All right. So here we go.
14.15 Questioner. Going back to the start of this 75,000 year period, there was the harvesting 25,000 years after the start, which would make it 50,000 years ago, I would assume. Can you tell me how many were harvested from our planet at that time? Ra, I am Ra. The harvest was none. 14.16 Questioner, there was no harvest? What about 25,000 years ago? Was there a harvest then? Ra, I am Ra. A harvesting began taking place in the latter portion, as you measure time/space, of the second cycle, with individuals finding the gateway to intelligent infinity. The harvest of that time, though extremely small, were those entities of extreme distortion towards service to the entities which now were to repeat the major cycle. These entities, therefore, remained in third density, although they could, at any moment/present nexus, leave this density through use of intelligent infinity.
Thank you. I was going to ask that, Denise. Thank you for that. Yeah, some people, when they hear my explanation or they start hearing it, they just don't resonate with it and they just take off. But some of them also might have to be refreshing their screen and they may pop back in. It's just what happens. Some people are ready and they hear it and it resonates with them and they stay, and other people hear it and they think that I'm crazy and they move on. That's just where they are in their development. Okay, let's continue. Next question.
14.17 Questioner, then the harvest 25,000 years ago, the entities who could have been harvested to the fourth density remained here in service to this planetary population. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Thus, there was no harvest, but there were harvestable entities who shall choose the manner of their entrance into fourth dimension. 14.18 Questioner, then for the last 2,300 years you have been actively working to create as large a harvest as possible at the end of the total 75,000 year cycle. Can you state with respect to the law of one why you do this, just as a statement of your reasons for this? Ra, I am Ra. I speak for the social memory complex termed RA. We came among you to aid you. Our efforts in service were perverted. Our desire then is to eliminate as far as possible the distortions caused by those misreading our information and guidance. The general cause of service such as the Confederation offers is that of the primal distortion of the law of one, which is service. The one being of the creation is like unto a body, if you will accept this third density analogy.
See, now Raw speaking there, he says, or they say, Confederation. And you guys hear me talking about the coalition, okay? Confederation is the Confederation of Planets. That is the off-world coalition that is in the area of Venus, okay? Which is our twin, by the way. A lot of people aren't aware of that. It's a lot hotter there than here, but they are also not in the third dimension, okay? They reside, like Ra is in the sixth, getting ready to go into the seventh dimension. Okay, but it goes from the sixth. It's the fourth, the fifth, sixth, and I think they said something about seven, but definitely four, 5, and 6 that are there. Yes, I did. Denise said you may have mentioned this, but are we near the 75,000 year cycle? Yes, we are. And I did mention it before, but I rewound this on purpose to get to that because we were just talking about last time that the math is wrong, and it reoccurred to me. I wanted to talk about that because last week I talked about, and I've talked to some of you guys separately about this, about the cycle of when Jesus was born and what that cycle is. And Peter pointed out last week, if you were here, that the 2,000 year cycle is not, in fact, like everybody thinks, 2031 or 2032, somewhere around there. That will be another cycle, but it's not the actual one because I did I actually tried to calculate the math in a think tank. We were looking at, because the Hebrews claim that the cycle of the planet is wrong. First of all, I talked about that and mentioned it last week. Our body clocks are on a 25-hour clock, but yet our planet is on the 24-hour clock right now. And so I briefly said something is wrong. So the human race is used to a different cycle of our own planet that was 25 hours long, and our bodies have not adjusted to a 24-hour clock. Even though there's only 24 hours in a day, scientists know that physiologically we are on a 25-hour clock. So that suggests that for the majority of the human race's existence on this planet, there was a 25-hour day, not a 24-hour day. And that is either that or something shifted, and we shifted to that. Now, I believe there's an explanation for that because 24 is 12 and 12, and 25 is an odd number. However, respectively, 13 being one digit above 12, with the whole 3, 6, and 9 not going to 15 but going to 13, could be 12 and 12, right? Plus the one digit could be, in fact, the 25, but that doesn't work right in my head with math being. You have to remember, I was a physics major in college. I was going to be a physicist. One of the reasons why I understand Don and the way he thinks and this whole entire verbiage that is being used. Okay. So I think that our body clock is off because we are crooked and off by 23.5 degrees. And I think at one point we were off by 25 degrees, which gave us the 25-hour clock. And I know that doesn't sound well, how does that math? I'm not going to get involved in explaining that right now because it's kind of, it's one of those weirding things, like when you get down to a subatomic particles, you can't tell the difference between a cell that is my left pinky and a cell that is the wall that I'm sitting next to currently. Because when you get down to that subatomic level, everything is exactly the same. And it is only as you move away from that subatomic level and start pulling back up to the 3D level that you start to discern the difference. The same thing goes with our physical bodies, with the spirituality, and people are not even aware of that right now. And they'll get to that when it gets closer to being back more upright. Our planet is tilted at 23.5 degrees off of its original axis. And as the planet is righting itself, the moon, which is in orbit, is moving away from us. Exactly how, see, Hawkeye dipped out, Rick dipped out. And I said, I hope he comes back. It was hard to find you again. I apologize. I'm on Orion Rising, the page on Facebook. And I'm on my name. So if you look up Leonard O'Neill on Facebook, you'll find it there live. Or if you go to YouTube, under my name, I'm there too. So I'm glad you found me again, Rick. You should follow me, and it'll be easier to find me when I go live. Because that's why I go live on my page, so that if anybody follows me, when you do follow me, you get the notification. I'll go live, and then you'll know that I'm live, and you won't have to try and figure out where I'm at. Okay, so our planet is tilting slowly back from the 23.5 degrees off kilter as it's tilting back to its 0 point. The moon is also moving away from us slowly at the exact same rate of speed, and which scientists aren't really realizing. There are a few, but it's hard to get somebody to talk about that, because that's kind of like talking to a scientist about the possibility of life on other planets. They're afraid to do that in the open because the people who pay them money to do the research don't want anybody to know that. And I don't want to get involved in all that right now. Because that gets into politics, and people go, "Oh no, politics! I'm out of here." And because they don't realize that politics is in fact the religion of evil people. Okay, of nefariousness. It is their religion. Everything that has to do with that's the dark side, right? Everything, the control, the lust for power, the caste system being set up in everything, to where there's one person in charge at the top, and everybody down below that is at a certain station, and then the slaves or the plebes or whatever you want to call them down at the bottom do all the work. That's the system that they have set up in everything: your business, your military, your government, your housing, your schools, your everything. Even your churches are corrupted that way, so that, like the Catholic religion, and know that I'm a Catholic, and know that I'm knighted by the Roman Catholic Church, and a minister in the Christian church. But Catholic, you got to go to their seminary, and I didn't want to give up sex, so I didn't become a priest in the Catholic faith. But I did get knighted, which makes me a minister. Okay, so the churches were corrupted, all of them, to have a caste system, and that's why they loved the idea of the monotheistic, male-dominated religion being the biggest religion on the planet, because that gives you the same caste system. A man is in charge at the top, women are property, and they're very, very low on the totem pole. Therefore, they can control everybody because, hey, look, you have a god, and that god is in charge. So they loved the Roman Empire. They loved the Greeks. They loved the Christians or the Jews. with the Western Judeo-Christian, and they want that to dominate the globe because that puts a man in charge up on some mountain, and everybody's beneath the man. Even if he's married and has a goddess, she's not in charge because ultimately he has the final say. It's literally been set up that way, and they love that, and that's why they've kept those religions. So you have Judaism, Western Judeo-Christianity, you have Muslim. The Muslim religion is based on Moses and all of that information from the Exodus. So again, it's based on the Hebrew monotheistic male-dominated God. You have the other religions are tolerated because they're mostly that way, like the Buddhism and the Taoism and even the Sikhism and that sort of stuff. It's all the same in their minds, and that's why they try to keep all other religions quiet. The Bohemian religion of the North, the Norse people, because that's a dual aspect. The Celtic gods and goddesses, the goddess being the dominant figure, and the god dies every year and is reborn every year. They can't have that, you see, because then you're venerating women, and they've been trying to shut them up with the witch's hammer. Some of you know that under the title that is written in, which is in Latin. And that's where the witch hunts were here in the United States, where they were murdering any free-thinking women and shutting them up, calling them witches, and killing them. And that was the only way you could test. They'd throw you in water and weight you down. If you drowned, then you weren't a witch. Oops, she was not a witch. And if you floated, oops, kill her. She's a witch. So either way, you died. They did the same thing. Well, burn them, and witches don't burn. Then they burn them and went, oops, she burned. So she must not have been a witch. Oh, well, she's dead now. Either way, it was shut up these women. Okay. So let's continue with Ra. They were talking about, and all of that was set up to keep people from realizing the other half of the energy, which we're moving into now. If you know anything about the Kundalini energy or the Celtic knotwork, and it is the two energies that are intertwined, masculine and feminine, war and peace, energies that are intertwined. Or the natural balance that you have to balance in your body to be able to learn what you're supposed to learn. Only living in one aspect or the other, being completely feminine and not and nurturing and caring and loving, and not having any of the other balance from the other side, is just as bad as being all completely warlike and in the lizard brain. You have to balance those two ideologies and energies. And in the East, that's called the Kundalini energy. And that energy balances your chakras. And when you balance your heart chakra, and you go and do that shadow work, like Carl Jung talked about, and they named an entire place after him, the Carl Jung Institute, after him because of his ideology and his discovery of and explanation of doing what he called shadow work, which is the inner work. And that was referring to, in all of the spirituality, and especially in Africa and the Middle East, is the underworld. In fact, that was also in the Viking pantheon. Going into the underworld was going into oneself. And that was the representation going all the way back in Egyptian history and all of those religions that were dominating the world before the monotheistic, male-dominated had a good place, heaven to go to. And the only way you can get to heaven, like getting the jibber jabber for the coop, is the only way that you can survive the coup, which they, completely make you think that herd immunity doesn't work whatsoever. All the commercials that they have on television now says you have to have this shot or you won't be immune to it. So obviously they're ignoring and have been, herd immunity, which is what's kept the human race alive since it started millions of years ago or thousands of years ago. Depends on how you want to look at it and how far back you think we've survived. We didn't have to get inoculations when Jesus was alive or prior to that, but everybody survived that was supposed to. Why? Because they were hardy and they got herd immunity, not because they never came across a disease that killed everybody, the Black Plague. That killed off more people on this planet in one little time zone than anything else. But people survived it eventually, okay? And it wasn't because it just went away. It was because people built up immunities to it. Their body changed, their chemistry changed, and the human race continued, okay? So it's the same thing with churches. They say the only way that you can go to heaven is that you have to come here and we have to give you something, spray water on your head or whatever, and say some incantation at you, and then you'll go to heaven. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you never get to go to heaven. And that's just a way of getting you to go to the churches so that you pay a tithing and that you're in their chairs. And then they only give you the lectures that they want you to know. I know this. As a minister, I have the Bibles that show you that they have a curriculum. Okay, most of you don't know this. They have a 2, a 3, and a 5-year curriculum, which means you're on a cycle when you go to church, especially a Christian church. But all churches do this. You have a cycle, and they tell you certain things on certain months, it's all drawn out for them. It's written down for them, and they know exactly week to week what they're going to teach. So when you go into any Christian church, you're going to find if you go to one mass at 7 o'clock in one church and go across town to another Christian church and go to the 9 o'clock, they're going to be talking about the same thing. They may even be talking about the exact same sections of the Bible, but they also give you a choice of that. Okay. So when you have all that, the priests open up the page. I have one of those books where you open it up and it tells you what the curriculum of that particular week is. And then you have different things that you can read to people. All of this is set up so that you only learn what they want you to learn. And that's it. They don't want you. You could not, in the Roman Catholic Church, could not take a Bible home until 50 years ago. You can look that up. Okay. Could not take a Bible home until the 60s. And they didn't want you to do that. So we're talking about the entire time. Julie, welcome. We're talking about the entire time from 2,000 years ago until the 1960s, before people could actually take, even though people were taking Bibles home anyway and buying them, they discouraged that. Okay. Why? Because they were trying to control everything that was being told to you. Okay. And there's a reason for that. And this is what Raw is warning about. So right now, Raw is talking about why nobody in the last 75,000 year cycle has in fact left when they could graduate to go to the next whatever reality, the fourth dimension, however you want to see that. Okay. And that's where we are. So let me go ahead and start that again. Okay. Let's continue here with the next question.
Would we ignore a pain in the leg? A bruise upon the skin? A cut which is festering? No. There is no ignoring a call. We, the entities of sorrow, choose as our service the attempt to heal the sorrow which we are calling analogous to the pains of a physical body complex distortion. 14.19 Questioner, at what density level is RA? Ra, I am Ra. I am 6th density with a strong seeking towards 7th density. The harvest for us will be in only approximately 2.5 million of your years, and it is our desire to be ready for harvest as it approaches in our space/time continuum.
I love that because 2.5 million years for us, that is an eternity, right? That's going to be like 100, 200 lifetimes if you're here the entire time. Now you have to realize that for the people who are living in the higher densities, time being separated. Brianna, welcome. She says, I'm back now. I know what's happening is some of you are getting knocked off the channel and you have to refresh. They do that because they're trying to knock me off. They don't want you knowing this information. They're trying to knock me off, or you just happen to have latency problems and your signal cuts out. Okay. But that does happen a lot. Okay. So you have to realize that what he's saying here is he's talking about literally, but before that, when he was saying, would you ignore a pain in the arm? Because they were saying, why are you still here? Because they are literally outside of time. Let me continue with that. I'll get back to what I was starting to say there. Let me go with the first part of what I was saying. You have to realize that 2.5 million years for them is now, because the everything being separated, past, present, and future, being separated is here, right? See, it keeps freezing, just like I said. So it's either your latency, Rick, or Facebook's trying to discourage you. You get opposition. I used to get knocked off the air, and I know that I'm not looking at my latency right now. I have a strong signal now, so I'm fine. But if it keeps freezing and you have to keep refreshing, you'll probably have to go back afterwards and catch the podcast, which is not on this platform. It'll be a link here, but it'll be on Podbean. You can go to podbean.com or go to www.orionrising, no space, .podbean.com/ okay, or / if you're a computer guy. If not, it's a slash. And it'll take you to Orion Rising on Podbean. You can find me on any place that you listen to podcasts on the planet. It's not a joke. Wherever you look, I'm listened to in 70 countries, 70 countries. And some that I was showing Casey, some that they can't track. So that's either in the planet or off the planet, or the people have encryption. So they can't track where, but they know the proximity on the planet, where they are, which country of origin, but they can't tell where in that country. Love that, right? There was 109 last week in Australia someplace, right? And it's not the outback, because the only place that has Wi-Fi is in the provinces that are next to the coasts. And they tracked all the people that were there, and there were still 109 that they couldn't track. Here in the United States, in one day, there was 29 that they couldn't track. So it's probably government that they have encryption. So if you get off these platforms like Facebook and YouTube, Google and Beta or Meta, get off those platforms, then it's far less. But I'm not live on the MP3 broadcast currently. So right after the show, I put it up there. So you can't ask questions, but you can if you come in here. Okay. So outside of this reality, in the first dimension, second dimension, and third dimension, time actually is occurring. So we have a past, a present, and a future. Outside of this dimension, past, present, and future all happen at the exact same time. So that's why you hear Ra saying, in your time, approximately 2.5 million years. But for them, and you can even catch it in his voice or in their voice, that it's sort of an urgency. It's going to happen quickly. Right? So 2.5 million years is not exactly very long, but from our perspective, it is, because we're traveling faster or closer to the speed of light in our vibration in this first, second, and third density, so that past, present, and future can be separated the way they are here, so that we have an organic experience, because that's what this whole entire thing is about having an organic experience to experience every possible thing that can be experienced, because that is what the creator of the universe is doing currently. It's currently experiencing every possible thing that can be imagined, and we're all playing out those parts. Okay, so let's continue here with what Ra's saying.
14.20 questioner.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back. Let me digress a little bit. At the beginning, when I clicked on, it was in the middle of Ra saying, and then we're going to go into the question here. Ra was saying, Dawn asked Ra, why are you saying to help? Because we're stuck. Ra said, and would you ignore a pain in the leg or a broken arm? No, you would not. You would stop to heal that appendage. So Ra, seeing us here stuck, is in fact because they believe we are all one. That is the law of one, that we are all one at a higher level. They decided, because it was their information that was corrupted down on earth here that got us stuck, they are now staying here until we get our free will restored to everyone, or the knowledge that you have free will that was taken from us by the nefarious people that are in charge. And then, of course, the Orion Crusaders, not to be misconstrued with the Orion Confederation of Light, or the council that Ra had just mentioned, okay, which is the Council of Venus, and it's the Council of, he calls it, did he say consortium? I don't remember if he said those words or not, but it's the Council of Planets that is here protecting this Earth and solar system, and has it locked down so nobody outside the solar system can just show up here, because the Crusaders came here and got boots on the ground and helped solidify this planet being stuck. So because of that, we've now kicked their butts off this rock, and the crazy people are in charge down here now. So you have the insane asylum being run by the insane people. And that's what's happening right now. And we're mopping up the last bits of that and trying to restore order and restore. But you don't hear many people saying this part of what I'm saying to you, because most people are still locked into, we're a penal colony and it's a trick when you die, and they zap your soul and make you forget and put you back into a body, and you're stuck here forever and ever and ever. Amen. And that's just not true. It's part of the narrative that they're trying to get you to believe. Anything that's negative or tells you if you don't get baptized, you don't get to go to heaven. If Jesus comes back right now, you're not going back. Those ideologies, even though they sound like they're from a holy perspective, and in some ways they are trying to give you a boost. It's that tough love, get up and get a job, kid, or you're going to be kicked out of the house. That's the same attitude. That's the exact same what that means. So they're trying to scare you and guilt you into going to their house. You have to get the shot or you will die. You have to get the water thrown on your head or you will die. You will spend the eternity in hell if you don't come here, and you have to come to us. Oh, and by the way, pay us a 10% of your wages tithing while you're doing it. Do you see? And Jesus and Muhammad was teaching that you don't need to do that. So just those two religions alone were teaching you, don't listen to that bullshit. When you pray to God, God hears you no matter where you are. Now, I'm not saying that because I'm trying to get everybody to not go to church. If you feel that that is what you need to do, you can still do that. But just be aware that while you're there, they're not going to give you all of the information that it is you need unless you actually pay attention to what Jesus said. And then, in fact, try and get the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are online, and read more of what was going on with Jesus and other things that were going on at the time that they took out of the Bible. And ask yourself, why did they take these out of the Bible? When, in fact, you read them, it actually solidifies even more if they were trying to prove that Jesus was the Son of God. The books they took out literally are saying that he's the Son of God, even more so, and showing you that than the ones they left in, which is odd. So you would think that but when you pay attention to reading those scrolls, you find there's other information there that they don't want you to know, because it helps you to find your way to a place of being able to ascend and go to what we loosely refer to as a heaven, which is not exactly a place that you really go to. It's actually, there's not a place that you're going to go to that is that heaven, Elysium, Valhalla, whatever you want to call it, where you get to live forever in just that place and do nothing. Your life or your soul doesn't end there. You still have education, so you're still evolving for a long time after that. So why would there be a place that you would just go to where you just get to kick back? And what is it? Are slaves going to do all the work and cook your food and bring you drinks and stuff like that? What, they don't even tell you any of that stuff. But if you're a Muslim, and you blow yourself up and kill yourself for the religion, you get all these virgins to have sex with. Are they a virgin every day? They don't really tell you any of this stuff. What else happens there? They just kind of give you these childlike stories for children that you're going to have all this stuff, run out there and get killed for us, and you'll be rewarded in heaven. And then the same thing here on earth. In 3D, you have to work and slave yourself to almost to die. And then when you die and you've sacrificed yourself, in heaven, in a place that you're not in now, you will be greatly rewarded. And you can take that or leave it. You can say, okay, that's true, and I believe it, and you're a heathen, But like I said, know that I have 4 titles in 4 different religions that are, in fact, a priestly title, okay, from around the world. And I've been studying religion literally since I was a small boy, and lived across the street from a Mormon church, and asked my father if we were Christian. And he said, son, you need to, if you wanted religion, you need to look into them all and read all of their books and go and talk to their people, talk to the people who worship there, talk to the people that are in charge there, find out if any of those fit for you. And I've done that since I was 8 years old, and I am now 55 years old. So I've spent my entire life studying this. It's not something that I'm just some dude who just decided, hey, I'm going to talk crap about religion, because that's not what I'm doing. If that's what you need to do, and you need to have that leadership, you can still go there and not get caught up in the rhetoric, and you can still graduate. But there's still knowledge that you're going to have to learn about yourself that will allow you to unlock this knowledge. And they don't teach you in these churches to look within yourself to fix yourself, even though Jesus said that, and so did Muhammad, and so did Moses, and so did even David and Elijah and a bunch of other people in the Hebrew religion, the big 3. And then when you look at the other Eastern religions, they all say these things. They kind of just pass over it, and they don't really get in depth and tell you, like Carl Jung did, about shadow work and what you need to do to go inside yourself. And any religion who says that, they say, oh, that's the devil trying to get to your soul, and don't listen to them. We'll tell you what you need to know. That's why I have on my wall the news agency saying at 6 o'clock, up next, we'll tell you what you need to know. Okay, we'll tell you what you need to think. All right, let's continue.
And you ready yourselves for harvest through the best service you can provide. Is this correct? Ra, this is correct. We offer the law of one, the solving of paradoxes, the balancing of love/light and light/love. 14.21 Questioner, how long is one of your cycles? Ra, I am Ra. One of our cycles computes to 750,000,750,000,000, 75,075,000,000 of your years. 14.22
See, so think about that. We're in the 3rd dimension, 3rd density. They are in the 6th density, and one of their cycles to graduate to the 7th density, 7th dimension, is 750 million years by our perspective. But for theirs, in their perspective, when time literally is only the distance it takes for the physical body to go from one place to another, everything happens all at once. So 750 million years is not that much. It actually equates to about 11 of our lifetimes. That's about the normal 7 to 11 lifetimes on Earth is about what it takes for a soul to go through this cycle, this octave of third dimension, going up through that octave into learning to go to the fourth dimension and then the fifth dimension. Okay. And I don't mean 4D and 5D like everybody's talking about. That's within this dimension, within this density that is in here before you go into the fourth. Okay, so there are two different kinds of, that's a problem that people have because everybody says, 3D, this is a dimension and this is, a dimension is a place, a reality that is an illusion, this place that you see here, the physical that is around you. And then there's the density, and the density is the measure of your soul. Peter, I didn't see you come in, brother. Welcome. Wayne, I didn't see you come in either. Welcome. So you have to realize there is a difference between the dimension and the density. The density is your vibratory pattern of your soul, and that goes up in vibration and up in this dimension as you go through the scale that is the octave of third dimensional life here in the 3D, which is the yellow ray, yellow chakra, yellow ray sun, a third place from the base root chakra. When you go into the fourth, it'll be literally the orange ray vibrational energy, which is literally the chakra between that is just before you get up into your head, before the heart. So it's just between the diaphragm and the heart. It's where the orange is and the heart is green. And then you'll move there in the sixth. When you get to the sixth, it's going to be completely about love. So it's wisdom, then love. And this place is the place of doing, yellow. Doing. That's why everything here is physical. You can't just make this shit float. You have to go and pick it up with your hands. This is the place of doing. All right, let's continue. So they have this long cycle of 750 million years before they can graduate, and it's coming up really quickly. They only have 2.5 million years left of the 750 million years that they spent in there. But that's from our perspective, not from theirs. From theirs, it's very, very fast. It's just like here. It's very fast. 11 lifetimes isn't that long. It's only about 1,000 or 1,100 years if you live to be 100 years old. So the average life expectancy is somewhere around 80. So it's even less than that. So it would be 8 times 11, right? 888 years would be about the one normal cycle for us now because we only live a short time. There was a time when everybody lived for 3 and 4 and 5,000 years and sometimes 10,000 years. Why? We were living 10, 11,000, 12,000 years because we had one lifetime and then we graduated. And then because we have became so much more violent when we fell, our life expectancy became shorter, and then it took us more lifetimes on a cycle to graduate. And that was covered early on. So now I'm doing like raw. We covered that. Getting snarky raw on you. All right, let's continue.
Questioner, 75 million. Raw. That is correct. 14.23 Questioner, in your service in giving the law of one, do you work with any planets other than the Earth at this time, or just Earth? Ra, I am Ra. We work only with this planetary sphere at this time. 14.24 Questioner, you stated that you were called by 352,000 Earth entities. Does this mean that this number is the number who will understand and accept the law of one? Am I correct? Ra, I am Ra. We cannot estimate the correctness of your statement, for those who call are not in every case able to understand the answer to their calling. Moreover, those who were not calling previously may, with great trauma, discover the answers to the call nearly simultaneously with their late call. There is no time/space in call. Therefore, we cannot estimate the number of your mind/body/spirit complexes which will, in your space/time continuum distortion, hear and understand.
See, now, Raw was misunderstanding the question because Dawn asked, when you decided to help or stay and help, because Raw had mentioned approximately 325,000 or whatever the number was there, souls had called out. So think about that. At the time, you have to remember, right now we have 7.8 billion people on the planet. This is in 1981 when there was only 2.6 to 2.7 billion people. okay, on the planet. So still 2.7 billion people and only 350,000 people were aware enough to realize they were stuck to call out for help. But what you have to also realize during that discussion, unless it's going to happen now, but I think it happened already. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. I have read this, over and over for the last 5 years. And the entire 106 session show already 3 years ago, and finished two years ago, and starting over to get into more details now than I did then. Okay. So you have to realize that the number has grown, first of all, right, greatly between then and now of how many souls are on the planet. You have to realize that, they don't really realize how many, and this is what he's trying to explain, or what they're trying to explain, that, and this was explained before, that one soul who is aware when they're calling out to the universe is actually worth more than one. Remember, we talked about this if you watched my Defense Against the Dark Arts, which had been deleted, and I've only been able to find one. Casey found 2 and 3, but couldn't find one. And I couldn't even find 2, but Casey was able to find them. So if you want to listen to those or watch those, Casey can help you. I didn't look on my MP3 file to find out if they're there. They probably are. I'll have to research that on those platforms that I post, because I have 375 shows on Podbean, and I think on Anchor FM, I think I have the same amount, but don't quote me because I started that later. So I may have just picked up live and not done all the back ones. But that's not all my shows. That doesn't go back to the very beginning. So there's still, about 50 shows or 75 shows that are not on there anymore because I got deplatformed from Google when they deleted 450 posts of mine, videos that I had up there on that platform a year ago, almost a year ago. It'll be a year ago in 2 weeks from today. It'll be a year ago that I got deplatformed from Google. Okay. I'm back on there, but I didn't get my stuff back, right? I'm on there now on a different channel that I had created. So you have to realize that it's hard for them to figure out exactly. And the reason that souls are hard to read is because we are the creator. And when we're here, they don't discern the difference between one individual soul and the hive mind. It's hard for them to center in. That's why it's so hard for Carla to channel them. So it's hard for them to literally, without being here, to figure out how many souls. So that when it comes to that, that's why they keep saying it's approximately this or that. Okay. So yeah, both videos are very helpful. Casey's reading to you. Both videos I'm reading what she said. For those of you who are listening and can't read the chat, both videos are very helpful for people waking up. Defense Against the Dark Arts 2 and 3. And I'm going to say you can check my MP3 file and go backwards in time. And if you go to Podbean, like I said, I have almost all of them, the last 5 years worth of shows up there. So you might be able to find them there. If I do, I'll probably try to link them for you guys so you guys can listen into that. But yes, if you're waking up, it's what you need to know. Okay. Yeah. See, Casey said she has them saved, so you guys can listen to them. So yeah, I wish I would have had that 2 years ago. Penny said, well, they were out there. It's just you didn't know about it because I did them a few years ago. I don't remember how long ago it was now. Otherwise, it would be easier for me to find them. But it was a few years ago when I did them. Okay, so you have to realize that one soul, this is something that I teach, and I think I talk about it in the Defense Against the Dark Arts. But I've said this many times that, you guys, some of you see this when you're sleeping and you go to that place where it just seems real to you and it seems like there's magic going on there and you were there. And you're there with people that you recognize. Some of them you go, I know you from when I'm awake, but you don't look like that. And you don't know what you look like because there's no mirrors. So you're there and you recognize people and you know that there's this sword and sorcery and there's this battle going on and you're a part of that. That's a real place. Okay. And in that place, one person, one soul stands in front of everyone else, and literally one soul has the ability to hold off the onslaught of the entire evil souls, all of them. One person can hold them off in a stalemate. Okay. And then they are coming, the hordes are coming to try and destroy you. And you stand by yourself and you can hold them at will, at bay, until you guys both run out of energy. Like that's where you get the whole berserker ideology from, by the way, until you collapse. And then the souls that are standing there with you, and it's usually about 7 of you at a time, will rush forward, and 3 of them will grab you and pull you back to heal you, and 1 more will stand, and everybody else backs away, and the horde backs away and then regroups and tries it again, and they come up and they can only get so far, and you're stuck. And that was what you saw Gandalf do in the movie. In the book, that was what that represented, was Gandalf when he stand there and said, "I'm the wielder of the light of Unu." And that goes back to Anu, okay, the god of Arcadia and god. Only he changed it slightly so that it wouldn't be so obvious, but he left it Unu, whereas is where you get that word Anunnaki from, which Zachariah Stitchin in 1948 translated wrongly, and thought because Arcadian god of Anu was their god that created the world, that on the Mesopotamian scroll they must have been referring to Anu, the god. When they were not. And that's been translated by scholars who understand that cuneiform and that language now, that the word Anunnaki that you thought is a race of people did not in fact mean the god Anu, like Giorgio Tsoukalos says in the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, that it means those from the heavens came. That's even a wrong translation. That's not what Zachariah Stitchin translated that as. Zachariah Stitchin translated that, or Sitchin translated that as the god Anu came from heaven to earth. And then in 2012, it was perverted by Giorgio Tsoukalos, who I've met. He's probably, if he hears this, won't be happy with me, but I don't care. Then he says on the television show, it means those from the a race of people, those from the heavens came to earth. And then everybody ran with that and started calling the Anunnaki a race of people, when Stitchin's wrong translation was the god Anu came from heaven. So the words Anunnaki means, according to Sitchin, Zachariah Sitchin, the god Anu came to earth. Not those from the heavens came, not an entire race. But now everybody's calling them a race of people, the Anunnaki. Okay. Anunnaki translates into English from not Arcadia, but from the Mesopotamian language as the prince came to town. Okay. That's what that means. It was Anunna, not Anu-Naki. Anunnaki, one word. It was Anunna-Ki, 2 words. Okay? Not one word, Anunnaki. Okay? Not the god Anu, Na-Ki, not 3 words, which is how Sitchin figured it out. He said, well, I know the word Anu means God, and then Ki means comes. So the word in between, he just kind of left out, but the god came from heaven, and then everybody assumed that the middle word means heaven. Okay, that actually means comes, and the last word doesn't actually mean come, but when you put the 2 of those together in a sentence, it doesn't mean that at all. So I know this because I've researched this, and I've talked to scholars who actually translate it. What it means is literally the prince, Anunna, Ki. Anunna means royalty, or the prince came to town, came to the city. Doesn't mean a god came to the city, and it doesn't mean an entire species or a race of people in spaceships came to the city at all. So the translation was wrong, and everybody's run with it, and now the Anunnaki are in fact a people. And now Marduk is actually called Anunnaki Marduk. So now people are now saying Marduk, who was the grandson or great-grandson of Tiamat, who killed Tiamat, from the scrolls, they've now perverted the scrolls further and added Anunnaki Marduk. They've added the Anunnaki to Marduk's name. So now, and they've also added it on. I've found it you can find it online if you Google it. They've added it now onto the chart of the Mesopotamian people. Since they've all translated them into a race, they've added that onto the chart. It was not originally there, but now it is. The Anunnaki is listed as a race of beings that has a place in the gods now. Added in 2 years ago. Wasn't there before that on the scrolls. You go and read the original scrolls, there's no talk of Anunnaki. They have the words in there, Anunnaki, but it means Anunna-Ki. But whoever writes it now, when you read it, they slam it together and pretend that it's a race of people. And it's not. It's, in fact, discounted by all scholars who understand Mesopotamian language. They all say that is folly, it is wrong. It meant the prince came to town. Okay? Doesn't mean aliens, doesn't mean a race of people, but all the people in the ancient aliens field, they have now usurped that from the people on planet X, which were called something different before, that these people that were there that show up on this 3,000 year cycle, which they're overdue by almost 3,000 years, weird. But they keep saying that they're here already and that now those people all of a sudden became the Anunnaki. Right? So they're like, we've discovered they're actually the Anunnaki. And I'm like, yeah, since 1948, but prior to that. And then after that, no one cares. When the scholar says that it wasn't translated right, they say that it was wrong. Kind of like what people say about Ra, is they say, oh, they just made that up. They don't know what they're talking about, right? So technically, right? So, yeah, Casey said, laugh out loud, or that there wasn't a they, technically. No, there wasn't. Same. So she said, I'm so glad that I know the truth about them. Right. Right. People are still doing podcasts calling them a race, Denise says. So, so glad. And they are, and they will continue. Most of the stuff has been perverted, and it will now continue. And eventually there's going to be a religion that will be invented where people are going to worship the Anunnaki. That'll happen. People do that. I mean, I talked about that, showing you during World War II when the Americans were island hopping in the Pacific to fight against the Japanese. They landed on an island that had Aboriginal people, and I only say that because they were Pacific Islanders living in the Pacific who had never seen white people or our technology, and they thought we were gods. So then when the Americans left in the 40s, when the war was over and they left the airfield, they went and got a bunch of bamboo and made a replica of one of the aircraft, thinking that if they do that and leave it on the runway, the gods will return. And how we know that is because somebody did have to land there when they were out there flying and they were running out of gas. And they were, oh, shit, I better land here. There's an airstrip over here from World War II. And they were calling, Mayday, Mayday. Well, we're going to land here. And they landed and people came out and were worshiping them. And then eventually they figured it out. They were talking to the people and they were like, we're waiting for you to come back. You're our gods now. Okay. So those are simple people, simple-minded people that are not educated that believe that. So a lot of what was going on in the past is something similar to that, but I'm not saying there wasn't aliens that didn't come here, because there was, and I know that. But some of that is there's a deluge, and everyone said God must be angry with us because there's a flood. No, there was a 10,000 year cycle of an ice age, and then the planet started warming, which is a normal cycle of the planet warming. And then, of course, there was a volcano that also erupted that heated up the planet. But it wasn't big enough to freeze the planet because it didn't block out the sun. I'm not going to get involved in that. But it also heated things up, and then the planet melted, the ice caps melted, and the sea rose 200 feet. And it flooded everybody because they were living near the edges. And God must be angry with us. Everything is God's mad, and we have to kill people and sacrifice them to God to appease the gods. That is childlike thinking. I mean, let's be rational about things. I was just talking today to somebody about that, where if you look back, and even all the way back to the Mesopotamian scroll, which is the oldest scroll that we're aware of, except for the ones in the Colburn Bible that came out of Egypt during the Exodus. But talking about the Marduk and all of that, let's go down the list of how this happened. Okay, I have read those scrolls many times. So here's what happened in the Mesopotamian scrolls. Marduk was the grandson of Tiamat. Tiamat was married to, and I can't remember, I think it was Enki. Okay, Enki was the god, and Tiamat was his wife, and they had 3 sons. They were also gods. The 3 sons who were gods, right? What is this? Great Barrier Reef was caused by that. Aboriginals say it was the rise of 2 meters every year, right? See, now that's the seawater rose. Okay, so. And then the corals is alive, so it grows. Okay, so let's go to so Enki the god had sons, 3 of them, and they were partying and they were loud and they never shut up and they didn't sleep. So it was pissing Enki off. So he said, "I'm going to have to kill them." Now you're a god. Think about this. This is 3D thinking. This is childlike, 3rd-dimensional human ego, but they're supposed to be gods and they're supposed to be benevolent, all-seeing, all-knowing gods. But all of the stories are like this. So the Enki said, "I'm going to have to kill my sons because they won't shut up and I can't sleep." So he tells Tiamat. Tiamat then says to the boys, "You guys better knock it off. Your dad's going to kill you." So they get pissed off because dad's threatening to kill him. So they go kill dad. This is the story. You can read this. So they go and kill their god, their creator, Enki. And because they murder Enki, Tiamat gets pissed off and she wants to murder them now. So now Tiamat's the great evil because now she's turned wicked because they murdered their father who threatened to kill them. And then she went and killed them. So now everybody else is scared to death because now Tiamat is evil. And they don't explain why she's not just a very distraught mother who her sons murdered her love. And then she got so mad at her sons for killing them that she killed them too. But now she needs to be killed. So everybody they sent up against her couldn't withstand because she was too powerful. So eventually they went to her grandson, who was named Marduk, who was a great, great warrior. And they empowered him. And he was able to stand up against his grandmother. And he was able to kill his grandmother. And that was the beginning of the human race. Okay. So all of the stories, the creation stories, are almost identical to that. The Bohemian creation story has the same scenario where it's Thor doing the killing, and they're fighting against the dragon of the North Sea. They split that into two stories where they fought against his sister, which they talked about. If you watch the movie Ragnarok, she shows up in there, and people are like, where did she come from? She was the great evil. Okay, when they were attacking Jotunheim and killing off the frost giants, she was doing most of that. They show you that storyline in the movie of Ragnarok. Okay, and she turned evil because she the bloodlust of doing what she needed to do. Again, here's the story where of this goddess who now becomes evil after she does these deeds to solidify the reign of her father Odin and in Valhalla and Middle Earth. So now all of a sudden she's evil and has to be killed. So she's banished. Okay. And then, of course, the dragon of the North Sea is kind of separate. But this goes into Marduk with that story. And then if you read the Necronomicon, they tell you that Tiamat is dead but sleeping. The same thing happened to Thor's sister. She's dead but sleeping. Okay, so, but that's why in the movie she came back because they got somebody resurrected her. She was not, in fact, completely gone. Her immortal soul was still immortal. So even though they killed her physical body, she was asleep, and then she woke up and came back and was going to take over everything. And that's when they unleashed Surtur, and Surtur took over and was killing, and ended up killing her and destroying Valhalla. And then they moved to Middle Earth. And that's why we know the legend of Thor and all of that, because they moved here to our reality on Middle Earth. Okay. That's the myth of the Viking creation story. And the sky was created from her skull. The dome of the sky is her skull. And her teeth are the mountains, and her bones are the mountains, and her blood and tears are the water, and the blood that's splattered when they chop their head off is now the points of light that are the stars. This is exactly the same story with Tiamat. Okay, Tiamat was killed, and her head was now the dome that is the sky. And seeing through the dome of the sky is the cracks in her skull from her head being chopped off, and her teeth and her bones are the mountains, and her blood is the sea. Okay, so that's the same story, and they're literally 8,000 miles apart. But they have the exact same creation story. Now, the other creation stories are very similar around the world. Okay. So, but again, it's these gods, right? And you can read the Hindu War of the Gods. It's the same scenario that's playing out. So these gods who are supposed to be forever and immortal, all-seeing, all-knowing, are very childlike, 3D, egoic in their nature. Okay, it's not until later on, as the human race has been growing up, that they realize these gods can't be gods, because gods wouldn't be that way. So all of a sudden, the Hebrew God from the Old Testament, who was very angry, do as I say, not as I do, and murder people in Sodom and Gomorrah, everyone, including women and children and little babies who are obviously must be innocent. All of a sudden, they're all wicked, they're all evil, and they all need to be killed. So I'm going to kill them all. Do what I tell you to do, or I'll annihilate the entire city. All of a sudden, that changed when the people started to grow up. And the narrative then was, well, that's not exactly what they meant, right? And yes, the sea level, going back to what Rick said, the sea level rose when the ice caps melt. No, I saw what you said. I realized what you meant, bro. I knew what you were talking about. And then I was also saying coral grows, and that's why coral is still close enough to the surface for us to find it. It's not 200 meters below the surface is what I meant. I didn't specify that either, right? But I saw what you said. So, but yes, the ice caps melted in the when they said back in the Hindu religion, where they were talking about Shiva used to live on Earth in this city. They said, well, that city doesn't exist, so that's a myth, and that's not really a god. Well, they've actually now found that city 500 feet below the sea level. They found the city that was the fabled city from their doctrine, but it's actually there, so it's underwater. The same thing with the sinking of Atlantis. How did Atlantis sink? Well, the ice caps melted, and 200 meters, the ocean rose in 200 meters. That was the deluge, the flood. And where do people mostly live? It's not until our societies become bigger and bigger and bigger that we move off the coasts because we need to. So most of our societies, even today, are on the coast, and then there's still people living inland because we have a larger population because we're living longer. Right. So if you go back in time when there was only 800,000 people on the planet, there was no need to live in the Midwest, although some people chose to. The majority of the people in the United States are going to live on the coast of the United States. That's the way the majority is now. If you look at the population of the people that live on the coast of the United States, literally starting from Washington and going all the way down California and shooting across over to Texas and going, around the Panhandle and up Florida to the East Coast, the majority of the population of this United States is on the coasts. Okay. So if the water rose, if the sea level rose 200 meters in a year, every year consistently, how many people would disappear or have to move inland? Do you see? Same thing happened there. So whole cities, New York would be underwater. Okay. London would be underwater. San Francisco would be underwater. Los Angeles, San Diego, underwater. If the sea rose 200 meters, cities would be gone. They would still be there, but nobody would be able to get to them unless they swam down there. That's what's down there now, and they're discovering that. So there's my point. Okay. So you have to realize that the true history of our world has been kept from us. Okay. And they don't want you to know that. Why? Because there's an unlocking in the knowledge that you learn. That's why they perverted the Garden of Eden story, so that learning knowledge is bad and that God somehow didn't want us to know something. Oh, well, they learned the knowledge of good and evil, and that was our sin. Learning that you have free will to choose to be good or evil is a sin. Where is that written? Only in that story. Is that written? That's the secret they don't want you to know, is that you have free will. They don't want you to know. They want to control you and keep you in your lizard brain. That is the truth. That's why we're stuck. That is the knowledge that Ra inadvertently gave to the pre-dynastic priests in Egypt, which would have been more than 12,000 years ago. And they took that knowledge and what the pyramids were about, and they used it for their own gain and controlled everybody. And they have been ever since. Okay. And that is why the people of this planet currently are having a problem with graduating. Okay. And see, now Peter's referring to Newgrange, right? And talking about Ra and the kings and the Valley of Kings, and going back, and he has a diagram of that. And he's talking about things, and he's trying to be cryptic right now because he's trying to get past the algorithms. Okay. But I know because he and I have had these conversations. So he's saying that if you take a diagram, right, and you look at Newgrange and then you overlay that in a few places, say the Valley of the Kings, you'll find that there's a correlation, just like the three pyramids at Egypt, at the Giza Plateau, are exactly the same three pyramids of Teotihuacan in Mexico, and the ones in China, and I forgot where they are in China, but they're buried now. But if you look at my reel, I show you a picture of all three of those and how they mirror Orion and why they mirror the belt of Orion and what ancients thought about why that is. And I also show you that the Teotihuacan complex from the air is identical to the motherboard on computers that we use to run everything. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. because my mother is now coming into the dining room, and I have to get her to go and sit back down and watch TV instead of coming in here to find out what I'm talking about. So I apologize for that. Okay. So yes, Casey said, but we're in the process of unsticking us. Yes, and that is what we're doing. The human race has already gone. If you listen to the Bible, it says in there that the devil will be unleashed on the earth for a time. That means a time means there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. That time has ended. It's over. Okay, and now the human race has swung really far away from the light, as far as you can imagine. And in the last 12,000 years, right, there's that number 12 again. In the last 12,000 years, the Jesus character has come through. I talked about that 12 times in the last 12,000 years, and or actually in the last 16,000 years. And the last one was 2,000 years ago when he came, or that entity came and used the name Jesus. Okay, and there hasn't been any since then, and I don't believe there is going to be, because it's the number 12. Okay, and I've discussed that in the past. And if you guys have any questions, you can ask that in the class chat of the Law of One on Messenger, and I'll message me after the show, and I'll explain it to you. Okay, so things have changed, and we're already writing ourselves back towards being upright again. Okay, your shaman, Rick says, my shaman told me I was a high priest master in Egypt. This is a very good possibility. Who worked for no wages as a community looked after me. When you have that trade-off, you don't need to have wages, because they're just like the priests do in the Catholic religion and the Hebrew religion as well, where the people pay for you, so you don't have to actually go to work, so you can do that work. So apparently, this is Rick still saying that, apparently I had the power of the pyramids, not just Egypt, but around the world. Well, if you were back then in pre-dynastic era, not post-dynastic, because by then everything was covered up and they broke the obelisks and everything was turned off and not working, then yes, you would have had the power of the entire planet back then. That was what that got all destroyed when the Atlanteans started screwing with the 3, 6, and 9 energy, because they were trying to harness it for weapons, and they stopped the earth and they blew up, which is not in the version that I currently have of the Necronomicon, nor in the one that Casey has, because we have the same version that was printed, and it doesn't have that in there. But the version that I had 10 years ago, that when I got rid of it, unfortunately, when I moved, of that version, and they talk about that even in our version of the Necronomicon, that there are other versions because somebody stole some of the manuscripts and got them out there. So that one that tells more about the necromancy and the stuff that went on tells about that stuff. Okay. So, right, Casey, it's not in there. I read the entire thing. It just goes into all the spells, which are real long, which you are, and then it goes into the story of Marduk, and they're telling the Mesopotamian ancient story, because it's all handed down from then, but it's not 100% accurate. It's very close. It's not verbatim. So it is, it is paraphrased, but you get the gist of what happens with Marduk and Tiamat. But you don't get the weight of the battle and everything that she created and everything that was cast and all the stuff that happens, unless you read the Enuma Elish. So I don't know if I'm saying that right. If you look that up, okay, and read that. So, but it's not in there. I'm going to find the other copy, Casey. When I do, I'll let you know who published it and when. And then we can read that, and maybe I'll do a show on that one, because that's what I thought when I bought this one. But this one has all the spells and all that, but nothing about the necromancy, nothing about the wandering in the desert by the mad Arab. Even though they have a section called the Testament of the Mad Arab, that testament is the Mesopotamian creation story. That's all that is. But you can finish reading it. I would speed read through the spells, because remember we talked about that. If they took that long to cast a spell, then an entire army would sack them 2 weeks or a month before they would cast one spell, because the spells are a whole freaking chapter to do the spell. If you have the time to do it, I can see that. But the reason the Druids solidified everything into smaller amounts was so that you didn't have to sit there for a month, because they literally in that. I'm sure you're there. They literally have that to open up the gates. It takes you 9 months just to prepare, and then it takes you another 9 months, because you can only cast one spell per month. So it takes you from start to finish 9 months or 18 months to just do that. I mean, that's the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and just told slightly differently. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead is very long, and it's all about sailing on the boat to try and keep your immortal soul from going to hell. And you have to have all this knowledge, or at least the paperwork, buried with you, and that's why they would do that. So the spells were there for you, so that you knew the names of the gods of each gate, so that you could open the gates and make it all the way into heaven. That's not a joke. That entire religious aspect and ideology of Africa and the central, the east, far east, at the time was very long and drawn out. And you had to have all of this knowledge to be able to. You had to know the names of the gods, and you had to speak to them at the right time of the month, and the right day, and the right night with the right moon, and all of this had to happen. They were very specific about that. Whereas the Druids consolidated all that and went, okay, you need to be able to do this stuff in one word. And we talked about that with the finding of that stone that they found back in 2021 that they just put out for the world, with and the writing on that stone, that's more than just one word, and it doesn't mean the name of the person that's buried in that grave. It's more the creation story than it is that. We talked about that, Casey. You and I talked about that. So the pomp and circumstance of these older religions in the East go very in depth, and they're very long-winded, and that's part of their culture. It still is. Even though we Irish or the Celts and the Vikings tell long-winded stories, when it comes to spell casting, we're like one word here and one word there. It's very very centered and very non a waste of time. It's just that our verbiage when we tell a story goes on forever when we talk. But the actual spell casting is very precise, very direct, because you have to be that way. And that's why they had it so drawn out, was because it had to be so direct. There was no room for error whatsoever, because error would be the doom of you. Do you see? But it's just insane the amount of time that it took to get anything done in the past. But you also have to remember that back then, when they were doing this, people lived for 50,000 years. So I guess 90 days or 120 days, a half a year for one spell was like 15 minutes or 5 minutes to us. So for us to consolidate so that we're casting a spell in only a few minutes, I guess would be about the same in our lifetime if you look at how long they lived and how short we live, and the amount of time is probably culpable, to each timeline. Do you see? So it's a matter of perspective again, right? It's a matter of perspective again, depending on the timeline that you're in. Right? Pamela's laughing. Right? All night long. Yeah. I mean, let's be serious. Yeah. So you have to realize that there's a culture. When I was in philosophy, learning philosophy, my teacher, who was in fact a monk, wore the brown robe with the white rope tied around his waist. Not a joke. He was teaching, to fully understand a philosophical ideology or spiritual ideology or anything, you have to get into the head of the writer and understand or understand. There's that word again programmed into my mind. I just said it twice the wrong way. I said understand. I don't stand under anyone, and neither do any of you. So for me to understand or to comprehend what is the motivational factor for a writer to write it, you have to realize what was happening to them at their time. What was their station in life? Who were they? When did they live? What was the politics? What was the religious background that they had? What was the education that they had to truly understand? And that coincides with the famous quote, which I've made a reel of the man pushing a rock up the hill, right? When pushing a rock up the hill, you cannot truly understand. There's that word again. You cannot truly understand the actual what it all entails until you get to the top, and you can turn around then and reflect on the journey. It's the same to realize what someone meant in the past. You have to realize what it meant to them at the time they wrote it and what was their motivation to truly. But then you have to also look at the words that they use. Like, for instance, one of the biggest debates is Jesus with Mary Magdalene. Literally 2,000 years ago, in that language of Pharisee or Sanskrit, depending on which language they were using, and Jesus was speaking Sanskrit most of the time, that in that language, the word companion literally meant spouse 2,000 years ago. Now it means your buddy. My companion's my bud, my pal, one of my people that I hang with, my posse. Those words translate to the exact same meaning as companion, but 2,000 years ago in that language, at that time, companion meant spouse. Okay. So you have to look into these things. That's why Zachariah Sitchin, when he was trying to read a language that was 4,000 years old, he was assuming because he had some knowledge, he didn't understand understand the language of the Mesopotamian people, but he did have a little bit of background in the Akkadian language, and the Akkadian people lived next door to the Mesopotamians at the same time. So he assumed when he saw Enki or Anu that he was talking about the god Anu, because that was a god that was in the pantheon of the Akkadians, who were in fact Greek at the time and not Arabs. Okay. So, but their culture has integrated since then, but at the time when that was written, it hadn't integrated enough to where that word translated. And we have words like that in the modern language that translate to something completely different. Okay. I give you the German word from World War II for tank, and that was Panzer. And that's very similar to our Panther or force. Okay, the word force, like in the Force from Star Wars, means this energy in the universe that binds and is linking all of us with everything in nature. In the German language or in the French language, the word force means the same as tough to Americans or English, strong. Force, strong. So when we say I force someone to do something, that means I make them do that. It doesn't mean I'm strong or that they're strong, but in the language where the word was invented, in the French and German, because they were so similar and their languages so close to one another, force means strength, not to make someone do something against their will. Do you see? Same words mean something different. Here's another example. We have a car, the Chevrolet Nova. Nova means a supernova, something very bright and powerful in the sky in American English. In Spanish or Latin, Latino language, nova is two words and it means no go, does not go. No va. Va means go, no means no. Okay, so to people that they were trying to sell the car to in Central America and South America, they didn't want to buy a car that's called no go. Buy the Chevy no go. Do you see? So there's a problem in translation. Some words mean. Here's another example. I've said this before. There's a rock band called Roxette. Roxette, female rocket. Roxette. Okay. And when they went to Japan, they had to change their name to Rocket because the word Roxette in Japanese means diarrhea. This is not a joke. I didn't make this up. Lost in translation. That's what that means. So to the Japanese, the band Diarrhea was coming to play. Nobody wanted to see them, and they found out it meant diarrhea. So they changed it from Roxette to Rocket while they were touring in Japan. And all their album covers say Rocket if you buy them in Japanese or in Japan. Okay. So the same thing happened. This guy was trying to translate Anu or Anunnaki, and he thought it was Anunnaki, all one word. And but he didn't really, because in his mind, Anunnaki meant the god Anu came down from heaven. So it literally meant 3 words or 4 words anyways, a concept in his mind, but it was translated wrong. It literally meant the prince came. Okay. And it's because the language itself, the word, like the Hebrew language, when you put words together, the Hebrew language, Viking runes are the same way. The Hebrew language, each letter represents a number and a word, but the word represents multiple words depending on whether you pair it with a different letter. Then it changes the meaning of that letter. The same thing happens in the Viking rune language, unless you're just spelling out words and with the runes. But if you're actually writing something down, like we discussed, where they wrote down that on that rock, on that stone that we found that's over 2,000 years old, that each rune was representing an entire concept, not just the letters that were written there. Yeah, Roxette. Yeah, Ricketts. That's funny, Rick. You're funny, dude. Right? Ricketts. Rockets. Roxette was the, but it means the same thing. Penny. I love that Rick did that. You're funny. I like your sense of humor, Rick. Ricketts. So if you had daughters and twins, you could call them the Ricketts, right? Because they're your daughters. So So my point is to translate when you're looking at something, you have to look, right? Because I totally want to go see Diarrhea, right? Casey said, I know there's a lag, so you guys are like 35 to 40 seconds behind me. But that's funny. I mean, the truth is, would you want to go see Diarrhea? No, but you go see a band called Rocket, right? With a female lead singer and lead guitarist. She actually rocks. The band's actually kind of cool. But they never got really, really big. Well, they got big, but they didn't, conquer the world like, say, Metallica or somebody else like that, like Amon Mars or somebody who's got like 100 albums out. So, or AC/DC, everybody knows them from Australia. So, so my point is, you have to look back in time at the translation and find that when I was translating the Nostradamus quatrains, I actually taught myself to read Old French from 1500s when he wrote that, from the 1500s and the 1400s, so that I could see whether or not the people were taking liberties. And you'd be surprised how many people will actually tell you, and some don't. They'll tell you this word could mean this or that, and it changes the sentence completely. And the ones who do that are the ones that are being very scientific, and they're telling you, I'm not sure what this means because it could mean this or that or this. So if you put these together, it changes what the whole quatrain means, and they give you all the examples. The ones who don't do that and they just tell you that, that's the ones that pissed me off, because I saw that in one book, and in another book, the person was just giving me what they thought, their interpretation. And I said, okay, that's wrong. I need to learn this language so that I can then read it for myself. And so I got a book that had the actual quatrain written down the way that Nostradamus wrote it down, and then a translation. And then I would translate it to see if the person was translating it properly, to whether or not I agreed or disagreed. That's what scientists do. And I literally did that with all of those. And then I had a book which is banned. You can't get it. I can't get it now. So some people say that I made it up, but I did not. I have a witness, a buddy of mine who actually bought the book, that was the actual translations of Nostradamus, 100%. Okay. And everything that I read in that book has come to pass, not, hit and miss, and it doesn't come to pass until you think it does. And then you're kind of saying, 9/11 was in there. 9/11 was talked about to the day, to the minute, to the hour, everything was in there. And the book, I lent it to somebody and they never returned it and never got it back, and it disappeared into the ether. And you cannot find that anywhere on any search engine in the United States of America to buy. Cannot. But it was in a magazine for sale and came wrapped in a paper bag, literally paper bag material, wrapped up in that, mailed to my buddy. He read it and said, oh my God, you got to read this. I read it and was like, oh my God, I gave it to another buddy of mine. And good thing I have a good memory, because then he gave it to somebody, it disappeared, and we never got it back. And I never could find one again. And I was 16 years old when I read it, and I'm 55 now. But because I have a photographic memory, I still remember it. I have total recall, not photographic. But I still remember the book and everything that happened in it. And we've literally been checking the list off ever since. Okay. So, and it's crazy. And then I've read other things that have coincided with that and prophecy. And I'm not going to get involved in all that right now. Right. So I actually did an entire show telling you about the prophecy. And I started with that back then and came all the way forward to 2 years ago. So if you go back in my archives of my show, if you're on the MP3 file on Podbean, it's up. It's not on Google anymore because they platform me. It might be on Orion Rising, but I didn't look for it when I was there, because that actually goes back to the beginning of my podcast. So it might be on Orion Rising, the page, not the Orion Rising, the group. Those are both mine, but I go live more on the page than I do the group. Okay, because the group is just there for everybody to post. So people just are like on there, and I don't do much with it, because I have Ancient Aliens Worldwide, which, like I said, we're about to hit 300,000 members. This is the largest alien hunting group on Facebook, on that platform. There are other UFO groups that are still not that big, not as big as that group. And we created that in 2012 as a think tank, and then went global, and then allowed everybody, opened it up for the world. And it's literally grown just in the past 7 years, 5 to 7 years. We went from 50,000 to almost 300,000 people, because we're like telling the whole world. We've got a really good staff of people. Mandy Wilson is running that entire thing, and has now for years. When she got there, we had like 86,000 members, and now we almost have 300,000. Okay. So if you're interested in aliens and learning about that, there's the place to go because it's all in our archives. We have photos, we have pictures, we have everything. The television show Ancient Aliens has spent the last 5 years taking the conversations. This is not a joke. The conversations that we had, because everybody from the show is on there. And I actually heard from, I talked to the guys we just had live on there, Jim Peniston and Gary Osborne, who Jim Peniston, if you don't know, or if you do know anything about aliens, he was the airman, the United States airman that was based in Rendlesham Forest in England, which is their Roswell. And he's the airman that walked up to the spaceship and touched it. And everything that happened there, he told the whole story. And he and Gary Osborne wrote the book, The Rendlesham Enigma, which came out about 20 years ago. And we actually had them on for the first time live on Ancient Aliens Worldwide 2 weeks ago tomorrow. We actually had them on live. We had both of them on individually in the last 3 years. We had Jim Peniston 2 years ago. And then last year we had Gary Osborne on twice. Live, and those are all on Ancient Aliens Worldwide. You can go listen to them there. And I do have the interview that we did on my podcast, so on Podbean and everywhere else on the world that you listen to podcasts on Orion Rising. It says Ancient Aliens Worldwide, and then it's them talking about that. And Jim said to me that there were exactly what I was just talking about, and the changes that were made, and what the CIA actually knows and doesn't know. We talked about, we did that off air. Same with Gary about what's going on with the rollout of the alien agenda, which now is getting harder for them to hide since they shot down that Chinese weather balloon thing. That's not a weather balloon, it was a spy thing, and then shot down 4 between the United States and Canada. They haven't actually come out and actually admitted that they were balloon something, just that they were craft, and everybody's assuming they were other balloon somethings that were shot down. But I have not heard any official reports from anybody in the governments that actually said, yeah, they were more balloons like the first one. So we don't know, but we don't know what country they came from. I have heard they were unidentified, or UAPs that were shot down, not that they were floating tethered to a balloon like the Chinese one. That is, the news agencies are rolling that out and saying that. So I cannot confirm that they were other balloons, but it is possible. So, right, even Penny said, yeah, no word yet. So the news agencies are hip to say they were other balloons. And I've watched them ask actual people in the government, senators and congressmen and women, and I watched the pause when they said, were these balloons like the balloon from China? And they hummed and hawed and did not confirm nor deny that they were in fact balloons. They just let them believe that that's what they were. I've worked with governments before, and you learn to understand what people say and don't say, and how they say and don't say things in spycraft, if you actually want to learn what's really going on, because they will look at you and say one thing to your face and mean something completely different. Like when you say there was a UFO and they say that's not a UFO, because they know the designation of that craft. So to them, it is not an unidentified flying object. So they tell you that's not an unidentified flying object. It's just something you don't know about. And that's the truth of it. It is only unidentified to you. Right? And Peter says, and 2 weeks ago, and in Ancient Aliens, they mentioned something we mentioned. See, he said, started to let you know because I watched the episode Stairway. Okay, so again, Peter literally is telling you right now that something we talked about on this show, or he and I talked about, or we talked about in one of our chat groups that we have, that something we mentioned there, Ancient Aliens, in one of their new episodes came out with that information that we talked about. We know that, and while it was happening, because they're all in the group, and we know their producers are in there, and that was what Jim alluded to about the Ancient Aliens, which I got a little sidetracked there, that he said he knows for a fact that they monitor like the government does, monitor all of these shows, and they get show ideas from the conversations that happen. He was part of that, where they were like, oh, that's a great idea. We need to do an episode of that. And they would go and get the transcript or recording and turn into a transcript of the conversation that was happening on Ancient Aliens Worldwide. He says, I was there. I know they did that. Talked to producers who told me they do that. So they get great ideas from us. And I had people in the group go, dude, we talked about this 8 months ago, and now it's an episode on their new season. And then all their shows, like 4 or 5 in a row, were conversations that came off our group. So it wasn't a coincidence. And we laughed about it. We don't care because the truth is out there. We're trying to get the truth out there. So when we come up with these scenarios and talking about things, a lot of times it's research that these guys are doing. So then they take that same research and just turn it into an episode. Do they give us credit? No, because it's a public square, and everything, that you post there belongs to Mark, Zuckerberg, right? So that's part of when you say yes, they own everything you post. So they just took the idea. It's like putting garbage out on your sidewalk at your house. Once it's on the curb, that you're giving it to the garbage people, it's actually public. So you can go and look through people's garbage and they can yell at you, get out of here, and call the cops. The truth is, once they put it out on the street, it's no longer their property. They're putting them in the public for the company, and the company doesn't own the garbage. It's public. So they don't take ownership of it, and you have to have permission from but if they take ownership of it, then you have to have permission from them to go through it. You have to be law enforcement once they get a hold of it and put it on their truck. I know that for a fact, because when I was working as a maintenance guy, we found counterfeit money in the garbage. And it was only after the guy dumped the container into his garbage truck and some of it blew around, and I picked it up, and so did he. And we were like, oh my God, we got to call somebody. And the U.S. Treasury Department and the FBI showed up and locked the street down, and we couldn't leave. And we were stuck there all day. Not a joke. And they literally took and escorted the guy with his truck back to his home base with the big the big dump truck that they dump the garbage into, with the big machine that dumps it in there, and dumped it all out to sift through it. So they literally locked us down, and I was stuck there because they needed to make sure I wasn't the guy who was counterfeiting. Not a joke. My boss came over and he got stuck there too, and so he had to call his wife and had her go get us lunch. Luckily, we had a bathroom close by, and they were escorting us back and forth to the bathroom, but they had to search us. Not a joke, because they wanted to make sure we weren't the bad guys. But then I never heard anything from them. But I know that it was somebody who just had moved out, so I'm sure they got the guy. He was manufacturing money really well too, with a new style printer. It was printing off American money. So it was actually not counterfeit. So, but it wasn't, but it was just printed. But it was well done. The only reason that I actually knew that it was counterfeit was because I worked in retail for 12 years prior to that. I picked it up and went, this is counterfeit. And the guy looked at it and said, I think you're right. And then we both looked at each other and said, we need to call somebody. And we did, and wished that we hadn't. I mean, we got the day for free to sit around and do nothing, got paid for it, but it still sucked. Have you ever sat around with the freaking FBI and U.S. Treasury Department up your butt the whole day long, asking you questions and looking at you like you're a bad guy? If you have, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, or if you've ever been in the U.S. military and have them pissed at you and you run in a tribunal, you get it. Right? Okay. Peter said, we talked about that in the first group that Jacqueline set up. Now I know what you're talking about. Okay. And they stole their idea and had it on the show. Right. So we know that they monitor that stuff. They get people embedded in the groups. And then they go, ooh, that's a great idea. Let's do a show on that. And then they change a couple of things or not. I mean, literally History Channel did Who Watches the Watchers. That's a paper I wrote. I wrote that paper from a college midterm in government class. Literally, my teacher loved it. I got a B- because he graded on a bell curve, and I wasn't the top dog, so I didn't get the A+. He graded on bell curve, so I ended up with a B- But they literally they didn't even change the name of it. They literally took my Who Watches the Watchers and made a documentary over it, and it's all the research that's in there, all the words that are in there is exactly word for word what I wrote. They didn't even change the title. They just slapped video to it and had a narrator read what I wrote and my investigation. Not a joke. I wouldn't make that up. I used to have a copy of it, but when I got rid of my yacht, unfortunately, when I gave my yacht over to my captain, sold it to him, I left some stuff on board and I didn't get all of it back. And that was one of the briefcases that I had there. Had some of my paperwork that was kind of important, that had my certifications in it, and it happened to have that copy of that, which would look like garbage to anybody else. Why is he keeping this copy of his graded copy of when he was in government class in 1994? right? That would just be someone go, he doesn't need this. They didn't realize that that was the only copy left in existence that proved that I actually wrote that. Not that I was going to sue History Channel, because anybody who watches that, the information that's in there is information you need to know, because it literally is describing, who watches the watchers. If there's people like our federal government that could be weaponized. Weird that in 1991 to 94, I did that. I was thinking it was 93, the exact year. When I did that, my concern was, what if our government, our watchdog government, the FBI, CIA, NSA, got corrupted and became a political tool of some political party? Who watches the watchers? And that was literally what that was about. And guess what? Some of the question is going on right now is whether or not both sides of our government, the Republicans and the Democrats, have weaponized this political system, has weaponized these people that are supposed to be impartial. They're supposed to be the watchdogs of all people, including everybody except for the judiciary system and even them. What if that became corrupted? And now that's an investigation that's clearly happening in the United States and all around the world. So obviously people like myself, because the other person who did that was our President Carter, who is now going into hospice. He also back then, not too long after I did a study. It was in the year 2000 or so. He did a study about elections and rigging elections and said the same thing, that if the weaponization happens of these overseeing parties happens, it will be easier to corrupt elections in the United States. And to be very careful about the system that we're using to going into a system that we're going into now, because of the corruption that could occur and would occur. And now that's happening, or there's a possibility that it's happening. So people like myself who are very forward thinking or looking at things in the past have looked at things and wrote papers saying we need to be careful with how much we trust in these people, because if they're weaponized, then we're in trouble. And if you believe that about John F. Kennedy, what has come out, why would the investigative people, the CIA, cover up and say nobody can investigate for 100 years what was going on with John F. Kennedy? And moreover, why did these same agencies, a lot of you don't know this, why did these same agencies also put a moratorium on the January 6th investigation for 85 years? Why would they do that? If there's nothing to see there's no reason for any kind of cover-up. Why are they telling everybody they can't investigate it? Same thing with JFK. So there's a reason that they tell you that. They're telling you that because they're hiding something. Otherwise, why would they be telling you that? There's no reason for it. If, in fact, everything they say happened on January 6th, exactly the way they say, there's no reason that they wouldn't want the other side, the opposing view, to look into it. No reason whatsoever. Let them look. Here's all of our stuff. Come on in. I got nothing to hide. Here's all the facts right in front of you. So you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist. You only have to be an adult to look at the John F. Kennedy assassination and say, why is it that at the time, who was the director of the CIA directly after the John F. Kennedy assassination? George Bush Sr. George Bush Sr. gave up being the director of the CIA to run for vice president with Ronald Reagan. When George Bush Sr. became the president of the United States, the very first thing he enacted was literally he signed a declaration that said the CIA could no longer assassinate the heads of any government without the direct permission of the president of the United States. Why was that the most important thing for George Sr. to do? Because George Sr. was in Texas in the CIA at the time of John F. Kennedy's assassination, and when questioned for the rest of his life, said that he could not recall his whereabouts at the time. You're in the CIA? That's like saying, I don't know where I was on 9/11. You're in the CIA and you're in Dallas, Texas at the time, or at least Texas, and the president of the United States is assassinated, the first one to be assassinated since the 16th president of the United States. There was attempted assassinations after that. That was successful, and you don't know where you were, and then all of a sudden you went from a field agent to the top guy in less than 10 years. You're the director. And then when you leave being the director, when you get the power, the very, very first thing you do, swear in as president, I do. Nobody can assassinate the president of the United States or any head of any country directed by the CIA, which means if he's telling you that, that means the CIA had that power when he was in charge any longer unless the president says so. That's what that tells you. The reason I'm telling you all of this, okay, and here some of you will probably change the channel and said he's talking politics. What the fuck does that have to do with spirituality and the law of one? Everything. Politics, that power, control, money, all of that which in the the Jedi way is the dark side. That is the religion of narcissism, the religion of nefariousness, the religion of evil. That is their religion. Power, money, control, all of that is their religion. It is their way, their modus operandi, their MO. Okay. So if you can, and here's a quote from Frank Herbert's Dune. If you can control a thing, you can destroy a thing, or the other way around. If you can destroy a thing, you control a thing. Do you see? To control something, you have to be able to destroy it. To destroy something, you have to be able to control it to do so. And that is their religion, to control. Mass control of population. They want power, they want control, and they want consolidation of everything into their control. Education, religion, your job, everything. Governments, militaries, everything is consolidated by those people. Yes, I love that, Rick. Rick says, shoot the arrow of consciousness through their heart. Agreed. Well, that's what we're doing. That's what we are doing. Okay. Right? Peter said JFK descendant of the demons who chose him. Well, that's in a sense, yes. Everyone says they're American royalty, the Kennedys. Well, they were cabal, of course. Yes, that family was one of the families that is the controlling families, just like Red Shield, right? It changed their name to Red Shield. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's say it with the German words, Rothschild. So that family, right? That was they were Habsburgs and Hohenzollern's before they changed their name. After World War I, they were kind of outed with those two names because the one cousin tried to assassinate the other cousin and started that war. The entire war was control over the world and which part of the family was going to control the world. You can look that up. And then they changed their name and moved to America where the new power base was. And they called themselves Rothschild. Half of the family left to come undercover to the United States and became oil barons and railroad barons here in the United States, sort of like Firestone and Ford. Ford and Firestone came over here and started companies. And then Ford's daughter married Firestone's son. And that's why you have the Firestone tires on all the Fords all the way down to now. Because it was keeping it in the family. Not a joke. You can look that up. So these are the things that go on behind the scenes by those people that are in control. That is all of their power is all set up, consolidated from the knowledge that Raw is just talking about, right? Bought all the war bonds. Yeah, that'll, right. And they did that. They bought all the war bonds. And that's how money goes here in the United States. That's the fake money. I wrote a book about that, as a matter of fact, called How to Get Out of Debt, Surviving in the 21st Century. And in there, I explained to you how the global banking systems work and how they just make up money in the war bonds, like you were talking about, just funds their war machine, and they buy up all the bonds and they own it and they just sell them like stock market and they get the money back. So that's the truth. When you buy a war bond, this is what Rick is referring to. When you buy a war bond, the United States needs money because they want to go to war. That's why they're called war bonds. So they sell it to you and tell you they'll buy it back from you at double the price or triple the price. So you buy the war bonds, you're basically loaning the money to the American people and to the American people, and the money that they're going to give you back comes from the peasants, the actual citizens. So we have to pay for the war bonds to the people who gave the money up front for the war machine to work. The same thing works with the Fed. And what the Fed does is the American government says, we want to borrow money from the American people because we need $1 billion for our to run the government. So they write a check, a bond check they write a check to the Fed that has no money, and the Fed then issues bonds just like they're saying, these are not war bonds, but they exactly work the same way. And they sell the bonds to banks and other people, and we'll pay you these back when they come to fruition in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and it'll be triple or quadruple what you paid for them. And all you have to do is just pay us the money up front. And guess who has to pay for that? The American citizens have to pay taxes to pay for those bonds. It's the same thing with just creating money. We also have to pay back the money. So when they create money, it's being borrowed from the Americans' pockets. So for every dollar they create, we owe $2. $1 that they had to spend, and another dollar that it took to create that dollar to spend. Okay. And so then they give it to banks, and the banks do the same thing and loan it out and make more money off of it. Credit card companies buy the bonds against that, and then they loan the money to you as a credit, and you pay it back, and they invent money and make money off of you. That's how the system works. Okay. So buying the war bonds, you get the money back later on, but you have to wait a long time to cash them in. But for companies, corporations, and rich people, they didn't have to wait 20 years or 50 years to be able to cash them in. The ones that you and I buy take that long because they hope you die before you get to cash them in, and you couldn't pass them on to your children. Then they started doing that because people weren't keeping them, and they would pass them on to their children. But then they were hoping that people would forget about it and not, in fact, cash them in. And then what they started doing was the same thing they did with the money that if you didn't get it back from the federal government because of your taxes, they would keep it. And then they passed a law that said if you don't cash in, that we owe you money in 5 years, and they've now got it down to 2 or 3, that we get to keep your money. So they hope you forget about it and don't cash in the money that you owe, that they owe you back on your taxes. So then they get to keep it, and they can just put it in their pocket and spend it. This is all true. And why do you think it's that? Well, it's because they're making more money, right? Rick says Rick knows. He says, look up how Rothschild started, right? They had a spy who knows the war and lied, so they bought all the bonds, right? Yes. Same thing. You look at all the firearm companies, it's the same thing, right? And he goes on to say, at dirt cheap prices, and now they're worth all kinds of money, and they sold them off. So, but it's true. So they knew, they're the ones who started the war, or they knew about it. And the same thing with the firearms companies. They make a killing. Business is good. Killing is my business, and business is good. That's the name of an album by what was the name of the rock band? The guy that used to be in Metallica. When they first started their first album, and by the time they got to New York, they fired him. I can't think of his name right now. I can see his face. He started his own band, and that was one of his albums that he came out with. Killing is my business, and business is good. So yes. Right. So look up how Rothschild got started and where they got their money. Same thing with they were selling oil, or they were buying up all the oil. And then they got into the railroads. But the railroads needed to move all the merchandise that they had across the United States. So they bought the railroads as well under a different cousin. And they owned the railways, and then they owned all the oil companies. And then that's why they shipped everything on the railroad. So it was their own people making money. Firearm companies did the same thing. And they were selling weapons to everybody. That's why they showed that in Star Wars, in the one movie where they went to that city, that what's his name, Benicio del Toro played the stuttering guy who turned them in and said, look, you blow them up, they blow you up today, you blow them up next time, it's just business. And literally she said, look at all these people, to Finn, how do you think they all have this money? War. Selling weapons of war and spaceships to the stormtroopers. So it's good business, and they're all filthy rich because of it. So these people that think they own the planet. Yeah, no. James Hetfield's still in the band, Pamela. It was, I can't think of his name, but he was in Metallica, and he was the other guitarist. And James Hetfield, before they got Kurt Hammett, they got hired Kurt Hammett from Vallejo. He was in that band in Vallejo. And they hired him after they fired this guy. And I can't think of his name. He's got red hair, wears glasses now. God, I can't think of his name. I can't believe I can't think of his name. He'd kill me. Hetfield would laugh. He knows me too. And so he would laugh and go, you forgot his name. And I can't think of his name. But he had started his own band. Dave Mustaine. Thank you, Rick. Dave Mustaine had his own band, Megadeth. Thank you, Denise. Megadeth was the band. And one of their first albums was "Killing Is My Business" and "Business Is Good," back in the 80s or 90s at the time, I think it was. No, it was late 80s. Dave Mustaine, the great, very brilliant man. Once he got himself off of alcohol, that was his problem. That he was a severe alcoholic, and he drank way too much. And they were like, "We need to get a new guitarist." So they fired him, got Kurt Hammett, and the rest of it's history. And so he's got his own band, but that was one of his songs. One of the songs, "Killing Is My Business, Business Is Good," the name of the album. Okay, so all of this was done by nefariousness, going all the way back. Karen, welcome. Going all the way back, right? Yes, Karen says, seems like everyone is a Rothschild. Obama, Trump, they're related. And Trump is related to Hillary Clinton, Hillary Rodham, which was what her family name was, her maiden name. Hillary Rodham's aunt is married to Donald Trump's uncle, the same guy who went into Nikola Tesla's, when he worked for the FBI, went in and raided Nikola Tesla's stuff and confiscated everything for the U.S. government. That uncle. Yes, so they're related, they're cousins. So even though Trump and Clinton, Hillary were hating each other in the election of 2016, they're literally second cousins. Okay. Right? The 13 families. Yes, Rick, absolutely. I like Rick. Rick, you need to be here more often because you can back up some of the stuff I say like Peter does and like Karen does. You can pop in and go, yes, and then you throw out some more information. It also keeps the conversation running, right? So the 13 families that they believe they own the planet. And if you look at what was that? I always say Mercury Rising. It's wrong. It was that Mila Kunis was the star of the movie with what's his name, Channing Tatum, or Tatum Channing, whatever his name is. I always get that backwards. It was Jupiter Rising, I think was the name of it. Don't quote me, but it was her name. So, but it was also very ambiguous to the planet. And the whole theory behind that was adrenochrome, and that the Earth was owned by royalty, and that everybody else was just here for the harvest of adrenochrome. And in a sense, that's a little bit more true to galactic reality than people realized when they made that movie. It sounds very scientific or very sci-fi-ish, but it's a little bit more close to Jupiter Rising. Yes, a little bit closer to reality in the whole theory of what is really true currency in the universe, because it's not gold. Like they said, the Anunnaki was here because we needed gold and it was precious. Weird that there's so much gold on this planet that it literally is like diamonds. It's in every street corner, in every shop, in every place they sell alcohol, because they have Goldschlager everywhere where there's bits of gold in it. And you can literally go to any shop anywhere where there's a mall, and you're going to find 3 or 4 diamond shops that sell diamond and gold. So if it's so rare, why is that it's fucking sitting around everywhere? Okay, so they weren't coming here looking for gold. They were coming here looking for something else, right? There are theories they were looking for ormus, which is white gold, which is it is a rare thing, and you have to know how to make it. And I make it, and I use the ancient Egyptian method of making it for when they called it Cleopatra's milk. And if you don't make it just right, it will give you the shits because milk of magnesia is a side effect of making ormus. She used to bathe in it. And that is only made from two sea salts on the planet, the dead sea salt and the sea salt from the ocean that is under Antarctica that most of you don't know about. There's a whole ocean there that's actually not frozen, that's under the ice that they have found, and the sea salt that is packed into the ice around that's hiding that from the rest of the world that contained it is the purest, and the seawater that's in there does not have any pollution in it, because it's not exposed to the air that all the shit we're pumping into the air. So the dead sea salt and that sea water is the only pure sea salt or salt that you can make ormes out of that makes it properly. You can't even make it out of Himalayan pink salt. You can add those chemicals into it, but Himalayan salt by itself does not make ormus. You can add the good properties of the Himalayan salt to your ormus when making it, and it'll give you all kinds of good benefits, but it won't make it by itself. Okay, so Dead Sea and that ocean from under Antarctica are the only two waters that are pure enough, or salts that are pure enough to reconstitute into seawater. Okay, so we believe that's what they were here mining. It was not gold itself. It was white gold, and not what the white gold that is the metal. It was ormus. But gold and diamonds are not rare. People just convinced everyone that they were worth a lot of money. Therefore, everyone pays a lot of money for it, because you will. just like leather jackets are going for $800. And when the stock market crashed, when Obama was in charge, they were selling, at that time, they were going for $500. All of a sudden they were selling them to people for $50 because they needed the money, because it only costs them like $5 to make. They sell it to us for an 800% markup. Okay, I'm going to get off here because my mother's still staring at me, and I still have to make dinner. And it is getting dark outside, so I'm going to have to go. But we will pick up at the last bit of session 14, the last few questions, and then go into session 15 next week. And Rick, if you're not already in the chat for this class on Messenger, you might want to have somebody throw you in there real quick, or message me afterwards, and I'll get you in there if you want to continue conversation. We speak all day, all week long in that chat about stuff, and we go on with our conversations, which carry over into this show and then carry over after the show to there. And I'm available for people if they have questions to ask questions, and I will give you stuff there. But if not, you don't have to. But I hope you come back, Rick, because I really like your input. You have a good knowledge, and having people that are knowledgeable in the show. That's why I make sure to tell people when you guys say things, solidifies the information that I'm talking about with you guys and around the world, because they know I'm not just making it up when I'm saying something and then you guys pop off with, yeah, and this and that. And it pertains to what I'm talking about. It shows them, the audience around the world that will be listening to this or is listening to this, that it's not just me making this up, that there are other people on the planet who see that stuff as well. So thank you guys. And those of you who will continue in the chat, I'll see you in a little while in the chat. And for those of you around the world, you didn't get to hear this live, except for on these MP4 platforms of YouTube and Facebook, but you guys are listening to this anywhere you pick up the podcast, literally on the planet. And if I'm not there and you find me somewhere and you want to listen to me on your phone or your device, look me up on all of your favorite places. And if I'm not on that, go to podbean.com, look up Orion Rising, or www.Orion Rising, all one word, OrionRising.Podbean, P-O-D-E as in David, B-E-A-N, podbean.com/. When you do that, it'll take you right to my channel, and the RSS number is there for you to copy and paste whatever app you use to listen to your favorite podcast on. They have a place where you can do that, because they don't want you leaving their app to go to another someone else's property that publishes my show. So they will take my show, and every time I post, it'll automatically be fed to your favorite app that you listen to me on, and you can then listen to me there and not have to download another app. But I am on Twitter, I am on Instagram, I am on YouTube, I'm on Facebook, I'm on iHeartRadio, I'm on iTunes, I'm on everything you can imagine. I'm on it. There's places that I've never even heard of that people listen to my podcast. Like I said, over 70 countries on the planet listen to this. Not live. So if I were going live on those platforms, which I might start doing again, I used to go live on Spreaker and Spotify, which is the same company now. I might start incorporating this and going live on there, because I am doing mostly non-visuals these days, just doing an MP3 broadcast. Even though it's MP4, you're only seeing the images of the Law of One and the opening images to my song. So I've already started to transition, and I keep getting deplatformed off these platforms. They're dying as it is. Meta is going under, and so is Google. So everybody's moving off these platforms. Eventually, I'll be doing that too and going live somewhere else. Right. All right, guys. Have a great night. I love you guys. Share this out, share this out, share this out. I'll see you guys next Friday for more of the Law of One. But it's not just the Law of One. Know that if you've gotten this far, you know that I don't just talk about only the Law of One, but everything pertains to that, because Ra was warning us about everything that I just talked about. So if you think that politics and religion are two separate things, they are, only in that religion and your idea is Christianity or something that is a positive spin on spirituality. Know that the opposite negative spin on that same spirituality is in fact politics. Okay. that entire species of control and all of that is the dark side of the Force. Because I am a Jedi Knight, I do have that title as well. Because it is a real religion in some places on this planet. They just don't acknowledge that in this country or in the UK right now. Although the people in the UK are trying to get it as a religion, they refuse. Why? Because it's teaching the Eastern philosophical thought and the thought that you are more than just a slave. And they can't have that. That's why they killed Jesus. That's why they tried to kill Muhammad. That's why they killed Mahatma Gandhi. That's why they killed Martin Luther King Jr. That's why they killed everybody who speaks. Everybody who speaks, including Malcolm X. They were all assassinated. Stephen Biko. When a leader speaks to tell you to stand up and be free on this planet, they murder you for it until they can't. And that's where we are now. Have a great night. I love you guys. I'll see you next week.